Hello, everyone. We are here today to discuss the action plan to help Sarah gain independence and improve her quality of life by helping her to achieve her goal of securing competitive employment within the retail field. Today's participants include Sarah, a 19-year-old female seeking gainful employment, Claudia, the mother of Sarah, Janet, the BCBA supervising Sarah's case, Mary, the employment advocate retained by Claudia from the local Jackson Mental Health Center, and lastly, myself, the care coordinator and facilitator of today's meeting. Terms to keep in mind during our discussion. Quality of life. For the phrase quality of life, we are specifically referencing the basic human right for all people to be accepted for who they are and have the ability to freely communicate with other individuals. Quality of life includes making personal decisions, setting goals about their own future, and the ability to partake in all aspects of the human experiences. Empowerment, the pursuit of self-sufficiency and independence via an intimate knowledge of legislative law and federal funding to encourage self-advocacy and self-determination. Care will be defined as federal funding and legislative law to determine post-school choices, specifically for employment. Parents and/or guardians rely on these laws to protect their children with disabilities and funding to pay for supportive services. Independence. Independence is being defined as the right to act and speak without restriction. Self-governed and self-sufficient. Welcome, ladies. We're going to start today's discussion by hearing Sarah's point of view, why we're meeting today. Sarah has expressed a desire to transition into the workforce. Sarah, can you go ahead and tell us a little bit about that? What do you want us to do?
Hi, my name is Sarah, and I want to work in a retail store in the mall, like Old Navy or H&M. I love H&M. The mall is about 20 minutes away from my house. I want to help people find the clothes they want. I also like being at the mall because lots of people my age are there. It makes me feel popular when I can give advice to other girls my age about fashion. I also like the food court and love to visit the nail salon and the pet store to pet the puppies. Working there would be so much fun. After work, I could go eat or get my nails done. I might even adopt a dog if Mom is okay with it.
Hi, my name is Claudia, and I'm Sarah's mom. My concerns with Sarah obtaining employment are that she has some difficulty with problem-solving skills. If she's faced with a difficult situation, she may not be able to work through it on her own. Some of this issue is due to the fact that she can only complete a task with 2 or 3 steps at a time. If a problem comes up during those 2 or 3 steps, she cannot work through it on her own to figure it out. However, if Sarah is approached and told how to fix a problem, she may become frustrated. The other issue is Sarah has a difficult time focusing on a task for longer than 5 minutes. She can become bored with the task and is also distracted very easily, so completing longer tasks is not ideal for her. For these reasons, I'm concerned Sarah will need assistance in the workforce, and I'm not sure what is available.
Hello, everyone. My name is Mary, and I am here to be the employment advocate today on behalf of Sarah. Claudia, any worries that you may have about Sarah's future employment are valid, and I feel confident that we can address your concerns throughout this meeting today. We can also develop some possible solutions, and I don't want you to have any worries once we are done.
Good afternoon. My name is Janet, and I'm a behavior analyst. My job is to help prepare my client to achieve whatever necessary skill set she may need so that she can reach the career path of her choice. A part of her collaborative team, we will want to reassure her and her mother that we are determined to help her be successful at reaching her goals. As a board-certified behavior analyst, our profession is afforded with specific guidelines and ethics to guide us in the service delivery to our clients. We will be referencing some of these ethical guidelines throughout today's discussion to ensure that we are truly providing Sarah with the best quality of services. These ethical codes can be found on the Behavior Analyst Certification Board's website, which is located at the BACB website. Since I'm obligated by the Ethical Code 2.05, which spells out the rights and prerogatives of clients, I need to ensure that Sarah's legal rights are being fulfilled. At this time, I would like to take a moment to share with all of you some important legal and research aspects pertaining to being employed as an individual with a disability. I will be helping this team plan a transitional plan that is consistent with all applicable laws and regulations. Together we can get started. And I would like to share some historical research with each of you to help establish the importance of this meeting. According to a research study conducted in 1996 by Lee, the United States established the Rehabilitation Act in 1972 to prohibit all public employers from discriminating on the basis of disability. The American Disability Act was later established almost 2 decades later in 1990, which required employers to provide accommodations to help individuals with disabilities obtain and retain employment. I would like to point out that before the American Disability Act, employers were not required to provide accommodations to their employees. This act did not explicitly define what constitutes a reasonable accommodation. In the workplace, however, it did provide various examples of alterations to the workplace environment, schedules, and employee position modifications. Despite these legal mandates, Shattuck et al. Conducted 2 separate research studies in 2012 and stated, "The promise of independence and full participation in the workforce has yet to be realized by the majority of young adults with ASD, regardless of earlier communication, social, and cognitive gains."
That only furthers my concern that Sarah will not have access to the support she needs to be successful and unlock her greatest potential.
I want to say thank you, Janet, for sharing your research, and I understand your concerns, Claudia. I also have completed some research and found that in 2010, Chan, Strasser, Maher, Lee, Jones, and Johnson conducted a research study in which they gave surveys to several managers of various jobs, and the results indicated greatly favorable attitude towards workers with disabilities. These employers also reported that accommodations which were provided to workers with these disabilities typically cost them little to nothing, and they experienced effective results, as well as felt the accommodations that were provided were worth the investment for retaining experienced workers and increasing productivity in the workplace.
That's an interesting point, Mary, but that research found that managers were willing to invest in experienced workers. Sarah is not an experienced worker, and I'm afraid most employers are not willing to invest the additional time and resources into training her.
All right, let's focus on the skills that Sarah needs support with to better her employment prospects. Claudia mentioned that Sarah becomes easily frustrated when she has a difficult task, and things are more complex or time-consuming.
Sarah, do you agree with what your mother has said, that you often have a hard time with finishing tasks, especially if you don't find them interesting? I would like to help you find a way to accommodate this.
Yes, I struggle sometimes. I can sometimes get mad too. I really don't like math, and I hate cleaning my house.
That's understandable. Do you have anything currently that you use to help to finish your assignments or chores when you're feeling mad?
Yes. At school, I had a list of things to do in each class, and that helped me to finish what I had to do. Mom hangs a list of chores on the refrigerator that I need to do each day before I can go do the stuff that I really like.
That's great. I believe that we can provide you with lists to use at work as a support, which would help you complete the things you may not particularly like to do. We would need to do a process, which is called task analysis, at your future employment to find out what to put on these lists to help you.
Sure. So in the past, other clients have benefited from this evaluation. I actually have a short clip showing the benefits of a task analysis.
This leads to the second key aspect of systematic instruction I wish to discuss. That's task analysis. Task analysis is the breaking down of a task into steps and sub-steps so that the task becomes achievable. This is particularly important in a situation where there is slow incremental behaviour, because the more finely you break a task down into steps and sub-steps, the better you can see incremental change. Task analysis is particularly important when training people with severe cognitive or physical disabilities. The coach breaks down tasks into steps and sub-steps and then needs to pilot the task analysis. It may be that the task analysis needs to be revised. Perhaps additional steps need to be added. Perhaps a sequence of steps needs to be changed. Or perhaps a step needs to be broken down into even more fine sub-steps. Use of the same task analysis by all people coaching a skill helps to improve consistency, and it reduces confusion by the person being trained. This is particularly important for people with severe cognitive disabilities.
So I hope that was kind of helpful, team.
Yes, thank you so much for sharing that video. Since behavior analysts rely on research-based knowledge when making scientific or professional judgments in human service based on Code 1.01, I'm going to go ahead and share two separate research studies viewpoint focused on task analysis with each of you. Because this is an accommodation that could possibly be implemented easily at work depending on the type of employment that Sarah chooses, the provisions, or when engaging in scholarly or professional endeavors. As far back in history as 1976, public school educators for students with severe disabilities have emphasized teaching students the skill necessary to help them be able to function as productively and independently as possible while using task analysis as an effective strategy. That research was conducted by Brown, Neptusky, and Hammer-Neptusky in 1976. And in a very recent study conducted by Collins, Terrell, and Test in 2017, participants were able to effectively achieve the basic standards of the job through using the task analysis instructional trials in order to learn how to grow plants and care for them in a greenhouse.
Oh, wow. Thank you, Janet, for sharing that information with us. And excellent work, everyone. I think we're making some pretty good progress. I do have another question for Sarah. Sarah, do you find it easy to know when you are upset or frustrated? Do you have any coping skills to help manage those feelings at all?
Yes, I do. I can understand when I'm getting mad. And when I do get mad, I like to go to my room and just chill out.
Sarah does well managing her stress when she has a designated place to go and be alone. At home, she keeps her room very dark and she listens to a white noise machine to help her calm down. I'm concerned about this when she's not at home. At school, she's allowed to go to the sensory room 3 times a day, and sometimes she needs it more than that. Will a store in the mall be able to, or even be required, to create their own sensory room just for Sarah? I'm worried that the accommodations Sarah needs will be too much in the eyes of the employer, and they'll choose someone else who doesn't need as many accommodations. How could we have this discussion with an employer to ensure that Sarah will be able to be seen for her capabilities rather than her disabilities, and show that a sensory room could be a reasonable accommodation?
Those are valid questions and concerns, Claudia. I hear what you're saying. According to the American Disabilities Act of 1990, individuals with disabilities may request accommodations such as a sensory break in an inclusive break location. However, the accommodations must be what is considered reasonable, and what is reasonable is determined by the collaboration between the employer and the staff. If the employer determines that the accommodations are excessive or interfering in employee productivity, then the employer has the right to modify or withdraw these accommodations. Creating a sensory room can seem daunting at times to an employer if it is not explained well. It could be as simple as replacing the fluorescent lighting in an already existing break room with dimmable LED lights. Also, Sarah could bring her white noise machine to work and utilize it during her breaks. That is another possible accommodation.
Wow, really, really good suggestion, Mary. Thank you for that. I actually have another short video, and it shows a sensory room in an elementary school. So this is just to give us an example of how simple yet effective this accommodation could be.
Research shows that if the student's in the right mindset and they get their sensory needs met, they're going to be much better learners.
Hands to your heart space. Take a deep breath in.
The sensory room is probably my most important piece of the day. Students go to the sensory room in order to calm their bodies and get all the emotions out and stabilize themselves so they're ready to learn and they're happy.
When we designed the sensory room, we actually took the entire room apart. We carpeted the floor so that we could absorb some of the sound. We put the shades on the ceiling to change the light. So when they walk in that room, they feel the change.
My class specifically, we utilize the room once a day for a 30-minute break.
First thing that they do is go on the ball and they bounce to a metronome. It's really a way to ground them into the space and give them some sensory input before we have them go out into the room.
We're going to do our rotation now, okay?
So there's different stations in the sensory room, and some of my students love specific stations. One in particular loves the punching bag and the ropes. He's able to get all that anger and frustration out, so that calms him down. Whereas another student, I know he needs calming movements, so he's on the swing going back and forth.
Another area in the room is the crash pad. You will see students that have sensory issues bump into walls, bang their head. So what we've created is a safe space to crash into. And then there's the light wall. You could use your hands, you could use your feet. There's different games that are programmed on there.
Yes, good girl.
We also work on balance and coordination. The walking path works on all of those. And they have to right themselves, correct their body in space. We have 10-pound slam balls. Some students just need to come in, pick something heavy up and throw it. That's the essence of a sensory room. You're putting materials in there that are appropriate, so students not throwing a chair. And at the end, when they finish with their stations, they lay on the floor and they're squished. So everything that we do in there is predictable. There's a set sequence.
We're all done with sensory room. We're going to walk back to our class.
So after the sensory room, they're able to focus more. They're quieter and their hands are to themselves and they're able to listen to my directions. We're here, we came from the sensory room, we're ready to learn.
How does the sensory room make you feel? Happy.
Thank you so much for sharing that video with us. I would like to share some information pertaining to the autism and sensory integration. When the autism spectrum disorder was initially identified, individuals struggled with the features of processing difficulty, integrating, and responding to sensory stimuli such as texture, sound, smells, taste, brightness, and movement. Sensory integration approaches have been commonly suggested interventions to be used with children with ASD. These intervention techniques can include, but are not limited to, sensory rooms, brushing, and sensory therapy. However, there are a significant number of research studies that have documented questions pertaining to the effectiveness of SI treatment. A research that was conducted by Schaaf, Benavides, and Maylox et al. In 2014 stated, the rationale of sensory integration interventions is that by changing how sensations are processed by the brain, we help children with autism make better sense of the information they receive and use it to better participate in everyday tasks. Despite the fact that some participants in single case studies showed some improvement with the SI interventions, it was also inferred that they were ineffective in showing significant differences. The researchers of 3 separate studies were not able to accurately or appropriately demonstrate the data representing the difference by failing to link the changes of behavior with the dysfunction by using incorrect measurement instruments. And those studies were Baranek in 2002, K. Smith and Bryan in 1999, and Parham, Cohn, Spitzer, Komar, Miller, and Burke in 2007. Therefore, if you decide to use the sensory integration interventions, it is my ethical duty to explain that I'm required to provide behavior analytic services within the scope of my practice and experience. And since there are concerns regarding the SI interventions being an effective treatment approach, it can only be conducted and evaluated by the OT, and I will not be able to include SI interventions in the behavior services that I actually provide for Sarah.
Okay, I see. Thank you, Janet. Thanks for that information. And I hope that was pretty helpful, team. So we have established that Sarah, as an employee, can and should advocate for her right to workplace accommodations. Claudia, do you have any questions, any concerns at this time?
I do. Sarah can be quite dramatic when she wants to be, and she can draw out her sensory breaks to escape non-preferred tasks. At home, I incorporate the tasks she doesn't want to do, like doing the dishes, with a more preferred task like organizing the closets and doing laundry. What I expect from an employer, now that I know that they should provide these accommodations, is creating a work task list that mirrors what we use at home in order for Sarah to be more successful in her work environment.
Yes, the future task assigned to Sarah can be varied based on the difficulty of the task and enjoyment. For instance, Sarah could be assigned to a non-preferred task of something like sweeping the storage room first by a more preferred task of refolding the clothes and repositioning them on the shelves in the store. This kind of job modification could cost no money and would only require a little bit more effort from her employer and or supervisor on duty.
I have a question. I really don't like being called out about something that I did wrong in front of other people. It makes me feel really, really anxious, and then I want to run away. Will my boss yell at me when I'm at work?
Now, Sarah, as an employee, your employer will give you feedback on your performance. If you would like your feedback given to you away from other staff, that is possible, but it is not something that can always be guaranteed. In retail, the setting can be quite, demanding and hectic with all the customers coming in and out. Effective and instant feedback for both productive and non-productive performance is pretty typical. Your employer may want you to perform differently and may have no time to talk you completely away from other staff.
So if Sarah does go to work in the mall, I want her to be treated like an adult who has a say in how she's treated. I don't want Sarah to change who she is in order to fit in or avoid negative comments from fellow employees or employers.
That's an excellent point, Claudia. I would like Sarah to be accepted as well. And we will do our best to ensure that Sarah receives feedback based on her performance, not her personality. We want to treat Sarah like an adult, but we also understand that you will also have more say in the workplace than what would be a neurotypical adult Sarah's age. We can do our best to advocate for your involvement. I did some research and found a work skill evaluation program that brings together employee and employer as well as advocate to identify strengths and weaknesses and guide feedback. It also assists the employees in being more self-aware and use self-regulation. The research was conducted by Brady, Rosenberg, and Frayne in 2008, which evaluated the effectiveness of a self-evaluation instrument that can be used in the workplace to facilitate communication regarding work performance and skills between the employer, the advocacy, and the parents, as well as the employment advocate, as I had already mentioned. This study found that the assessment was more effective with students who were transitioning to the workplace than for adults who were already employed and seeking assistance to retain their employment. So this would be perfect for Sarah. The instrument is called Job Observation and Behavior Scale, Opportunity for Self-Determination. It assesses different subgroups of behavior, such as work-related daily living activities for things like attendance, punctuality, using money, also work-required behaviors such as stress tolerance, honesty, adapting to tasks, and safety procedures, which are all things Sarah will learn to do when entering the workforce. The assessment also consists of 30 questions and is designated to be administered in a standardized interview format to gather input from the employee, such as Sarah, to identify strengths and to help identify weaknesses so that the employer can address these weaknesses during training. A training manual is also available that serves for a guide for employers and advocates such as myself if needed.
Knowing that the retail setting can be very fast-paced and hectic, I don't know that it is the best fit for Sarah. I know she loves shopping, but I don't think she really understands the different side of working in retail. I'm worried she would need to take too many sensory breaks or become overwhelmed and not be able to handle conflict with a customer properly, and ultimately this would lead to her getting fired. I think it's important for her to understand what her limits are and know when she needs to search for other employment options.
Claudia, being that Sarah is physically capable and has available coping strategies, working at the mall should not be excluded from her employment opportunities. As an advocate, I am here to educate employers to establish accommodations and understanding between both parties. With the skills Sarah currently has and can obtain, I am fairly confident that with the proper employer, they will not discount her based on her diagnosis, and we will set her up for success. I have a video demonstrating that establishing new skills and accommodations within the workplace are possible, and I would like to share this with you.
Philip Keefe is proud of himself for being able to do so many things.
I cut red potatoes, I do the cilantro, I peel carrots, I grate the carrots, I cut peppers.
And the list goes on. Harry O'Brien loves to cook.
It's like between God. I love to be a chef one day, to be proud daughter of my parents, of course.
O'Brien and Keefe work at Wildflower, a cafe and catering business in Chantilly, Virginia, where more than half of the 70 employees have intellectual disabilities. The nonprofit corporation trains them to work in kitchens and restaurants. Alberto San Giorgio is Wildflower's general manager.
They work around that table 2-3 months in each position, in each dishwashing. They do cutting things. They do many things. At the end of this process, it takes 4 or 5 years to do that. They are capable to work in any restaurant, in any place, like everybody else.
The employees, who range in age from 22 to 60, make minimum wage, $7.50 an hour, and Wildflower offers them time off for illnesses and vacation. Paul Miller has been a chef there for 6 years.
They love coming to work. They loved all their co-workers. They take to tasks like you wouldn't believe. It takes a while, but after a while, they go right to it. It's very rewarding for me.
Fernando Rodriguez, who trains them to pack biscuits, agrees.
I think they teach me more than I teach them. They're very positive. They're very affectionate. They're happy all the time.
Veronica Keefe sees positive changes in her son, Philippe.
He's much calmer. He's happy. He is energetic. He's happy with the other people working there. So socially, it's good for him to be here.
Richard Harrison is a regular at Wildflower Cafe. He says the food is wonderful, but that's not the only reason he comes here.
I appreciate the approach that the restaurant has taken and hiring those people. But my experience with them is that it's a great experience.
Shopping and packing skills aside, the job gives the employees something perhaps more valuable, a sense of self-esteem. John Stevens, who has Down syndrome, has worked at Wildflower since 2008.
This job is the key to unlocking all kinds of dreams. Not just being culinary, but to be the thing they want to be. Amazing. Everything they can. Sure, I have a city life.
Stevens says he wants to be an actor, and once an opportunity arises, he is confident he can act as a chef as well. For producer June So, Amy Katz, Go It.
I think that video answered some of my questions, but I still have some more. If Sarah does obtain employment in a retail setting, who is going to be responsible for helping her in a difficult situation? She might encounter a difficult customer or become frustrated when she doesn't understand how to complete a task. In these situations, who is going to be there to help remind her to use her coping skills? There are times when Sarah gets really overwhelmed and is unable to self-regulate. She needs someone there to guide her and remind her that she needs to take a break or take a few deep breaths and reevaluate the task at hand. Sarah's coworkers and management should be trained on how to help her navigate a situation should she ask for help. I think it's also important for them to be able to notice when Sarah's becoming frustrated so they can intervene and remind her to take a break.
Now, the ultimate goal here is for Sarah to become more independent and be able to recognize on her own when she needs help and advocate for herself in situations she doesn't feel equipped to handle. As growing into adulthood, this will be a transition, and we will have the needs addressed and have them anticipated for.
Yes, actually, I have found 2 separate research studies that have found an increased improvement of work performance through the facilitation of specific supervision strategies. These 2 strategies are called the Supported Employment Interventions and then the Project Search Plus ASD Supports Intervention. They were both effective in helping individuals with ASD remain successfully employed in competitive community settings after receiving behavioral support strategies while addressing social skill deficits and maladaptive behaviors on the job from their supervisors. According to Wayman et al. In 2012, the supported employment model is an established evidence-based practice used to support adults with varying disabilities in acquiring, learning, and maintaining employment. In that Project Search with ASD Supports intervention, it was conducted in 2014 by Wayman et al. They modified a transition from high school to work intervention designed for youth with developmental disabilities to meet the need of a youth with ASD. According to the BACB Code 4.07, it is important to address environmental conditions that may interfere with the client reaching her goals of employment and reaching a high quality of life. I have some research that supports both arguments that you have mentioned. According to the research by Kay, Jans, and Jones in 2011, the employers reported that the accommodations were typically of little expense. They also reported that when they had previously provided accommodations for other employees, they considered them to be generally effective and worth the investment, as well as providing the climate and culture of the workplace environment. However, on the other side of this concern is that the contemporary U.S. federal disability policy has dramatic impact on employment and civil rights for individuals with disabilities. Novak in 2015 reported that the federal disability policy has increased expectations for youth with disabilities to be prepared to work in an integrated place of employment.
Wow. Thanks, ladies. Thank you for this great discussion. I think it's really going well. I truly appreciate Claudia's concerns. Thank you, Mary and Janet, for coming up with very healthy and reasonable suggestions thus far. I have another question, however. Who exactly is responsible for paying for any environmental accommodations Sarah may require?
Well, that brings me to a previous concern. If Sarah is supposed to be self-reliant, should she be expected to make any accommodations, such as the sensory room we discussed previously? Also, the hiring manager will be aware that Sarah needs additional supports and has agreed to take her on as an employee, so I don't understand why she should be responsible.
Accommodations do not necessarily have to cost anything, as it was mentioned before. And you had said Sarah has her own white noise machine, and she could bring this to work, and she could use it in the employee break room. If the employer does not want to replace the lighting with dimmable lights, Sarah could always turn off the lights in the break room to create a more relaxing space during her break time.
Well, Sarah won't be the only employee utilizing the break room, and it would be unfair to ask them to leave the break room if Sarah needs to take a break in there. The other employees are entitled to their breaks as well, and the accommodation may become unreasonable for Sarah's coworkers.
Currently, we're talking about a potential employer, and there are always different accommodations that can be made. There is always potential to find an alternative space or have headphones for her white noise machine. These are only examples of the possible and probable accommodations. Once she is matched with an employer and has selected her position, specific supports can then ultimately be decided.
And there's an article from Nord and Hepperling in 2016 that favors empowerment as environmental, personal, and economical factors can alter positively or negatively an individual's chance of attaining competitive employment in the vocational rehab program. Since some people have a harder time getting employment that's best for them due to the factors that are out of their control. As a guardian of someone with disabilities, I would want the individual to have as many self-empowerment and advocating skills as necessary to store up in the areas in which the government program falters. Greenberg in 2012 recognized the 2008 United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, which explicitly mandated that work is a right according to individuals with disabilities. Yet in order to ensure meaningful universal compliance with its directives, the CRPD imposes affirmative duties on supporting states to develop a customized, workable plan that effectively addresses the biases about individuals with disabilities in the workplace. Among the recommendations to achieve meaningful compliance, the CRPD advises supporting states to modify their existing mediation and conciliation programs with their human rights institutions so that it meets the CRPD imperative. The Ethics Code 2.04 states that when we're providing services to a minor, an individual, we need to make sure that they are protected because they are a protected population.
That's awesome. Sarah, do you have anything to say?
I am just really excited to move forward with my future. Thank you for taking the time to meet with me.
Great. All right, so this has been a very insightful discussion. I have a quick video I would love to share with the group. The video simply provides some optimism for us all. I personally love it, so I hope you all enjoy it as well. All right. I just really love that video. So thanks for watching, ladies. So a couple questions to consider as we end this meeting today. What is the ethical responsibility of the BCBA in terms of assisting clients transitioning between settings? So as behavior analysts, it is imperative that we involve our clients by obtaining consent in the individualized planning for their behavior change programs with successful outcomes. And that's according to Ethical Code 4.02, 4.03, and 4.06. According to the research article by Flandry, Lombard, and Cato, 2015, under the Individuals with Disability Education Act, transitional needs and services are to be discussed as part of the Individual Education Plan, or the IEP, planning process. And decisions based on the student's future goals are to be documented in the IEP. These transitions required are included in IDEA in order to plan with the student, family, the school, all in order to better assist students and increase their overall success post-high school. Our second question to consider, how can behavior analysts help ensure empowerment is occurring for clients? Empowerment is obtained and ensured by a collaboration with vocational partners, creating and understanding expectations of employee and employers. Within this relationship, we build empowerment for our clients as well as trust on behalf of the employer. Instilling responsibility and a specialized skill set with our clients will bring independent problem solving and self-sufficiency. This is according to Code 2.04, third-party involvement, and 2.02, responsibility to the client. And this concludes our debate on empowerment versus care. Thank you all so much for meeting with me and having this discussion about Sarah's transitional needs. I hope you all enjoy your day.
Thank you.
Thank you. You too.
Have a good one.
Thank you.